Let's talk about AI and tactile graphics. I've been working with Gemini and their image editing model, which is Nano Banana, to make some tactile graphics from some complex images. So I'll show you some examples of what I've been working on as I refine this approach. So here in Illustrator, we see I started with this Einstein, and it's pretty busy, but a nice line drawing. And then I got to this octopus, and I started doing some monuments, some Picasso, the tiger. And as I did each of these, I was kind of refining the prompt more and more to try and get more consistent results from the models. There's a fish, a giraffe, a soccer player, which turned out really nice, a spider, a T-Rex, was a little too busy here with the lines, and last couple, monkey and a stegosaurus. So really kind of impressive stuff, some nice graphics from this. It takes a bit of work. So I am using Gemini and Nano Banana, and the trick for this is it doesn't know how to make graphics on its own. So I've created a really lengthy prompt that you can find on my website, and if you grab all the text below this line and paste it into Gemini, that gives it a better idea of how it should be approaching these tactile graphics. Okay, so I'm going to, while it's thinking over that, you can choose whether it's doing fast or thinking longer about these prompts. I'm going to grab an image, we'll do the Stegosaurus, and see how it handles that. Okay, it took some time to think about it, but now we're ready. I'm going to give it the Stegosaurus, and we'll see how it does. Okay, fairly nice Stegosaurus, but it's added some weird dots in there. So you can see not perfect, but pretty close. And if you're going to try to draw this out for yourself, it's going to take you significantly longer. We can go in and clean this up. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Let's do the clownfish. All right, pretty nice. A little complex, but fairly nice. So let's say we need to clean up some of these images. So let's look at this Stegosaurus. I think there's some lines here that are not necessarily helpful, and we want to remove those like weird dots that were there. So let's try to clean this up. I'm going to copy the image, and I'm just going to bring it into Paint, Microsoft Paint, free on Windows. All right, I'm going to use the eraser tool. I'm going to try to go in and get rid of these dots. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier. One dot gone. I'm going to make my eraser a little smaller so I can get this one better. Okay. I'll keep the lines around the eye because I think that kind of emphasizes the eye. It's just going to feel like one big circle there, which is actually more what I want. And I'm going to get rid of this line for the neck. Okay, that's it. So it took about 1 or 2 minutes to clean up this graphic in Paint, and now I'm ready to emboss this and send it out to the student. Much better than if having to draw this by hand would take significantly more time. I also get to kind of use the same image that the student may be using in class, as opposed to having to go find a generic image for the student. Okay, so that's one way to do it. If you have something really complex, you might want to work in Illustrator. So this is another image that was generated by Nano Banana, or that was processed. So this is a really complex diagram. Nano Banana has converted it to a line drawing. It's still really complicated. So one thing we can do here is we can use Illustrator's tracing tool to simplify this image and to let us start to edit it a bit easier. So I'm going to use the image trace feature in Illustrator. Here's the image trace tool. If you're not seeing this in yours, it's because you're not in the tracing workspace, which is normal. I spend most of my time in Essentials Classic. You may be in Essentials when you start up. But if you want full access to all the tracing tools, I like to open this tracing panel here. So that's in the top right corner, right next to the minimize button. You can find your different kind of workspaces. All right, so I want to trace this image. I'm going to click on the image. There we go. I'm going to click on the image, and now I'm going to start adjusting some of these settings in here. So the first thing I want to do is I want this to just be strokes. So that means every line here is just going to be a drawn line in Illustrator. If we use fills, it's going to try to enclose all of those shapes and make them out of like really, really thin ovals with like a black color in the middle, and that is much harder to work with, so we're going to do strokes. All right, strokes and not fills, and I'm going to ignore the color background. That isn't totally necessary, but sometimes it can help it kind of not focus on extraneous materials. Okay, now that that's ready, I'm going to click preview, and we'll see what it spits out for me. So you can see most of the image is just gone now. And we can adjust our sliders to kind of bring these details back. So the two that we're mostly focused on here are going to be threshold and noise. So you see I bumped the threshold up, and already that looks pretty good. I got a pretty nice line drawing here, and I can also bump up the noise thing to kind of clear out some additional clutter. Okay, so that gives me a pretty nice tracing of this. I hit expand, so that will let me start to edit these lines individually. I'm going to ungroup them, so I can grab all of these lines and say, oh, make these lines thinner. Or make these lines, let's say, like make the heart thicker, right? You can, may not necessarily be how you approach this graphic, but this gives you some more control over how this is done. Some other kind of options here. Here's one where I've kind of done the same thing, gone through and kind of made some lines thicker and thinner using the same process, so you can draw attention to these. I think typically I would present this in sections to a student, so I might have them, give them one graphic that's an overview of the body, where I'm not necessarily calling attention to specific sections, and then I might focus in, like another page is just a graphic of the heart, and maybe some of the area around it, or just a graphic of like the intestines or something. Another option you can do is you can go in and kind of draw over these, or you can do something like this where I've kind of take that trace output from Illustrator and just lay it on top of the original image. If I wanted to do something like get all this kind of muscle strands, I think this will be busy, but those strands will emboss really lightly. I think that will work okay. The pencil tool is really nice. Where's the pencil tool? Here. Okay, pencil tool is nice because it will smooth out your lines as you're drawing, which is really nice. So I'm going to click and just kind of trace over, and you can kind of emphasize things manually that way if that makes sense to you as a way to work. And then that's it. You can send that out to a V+ embosser or to a P-off machine and emboss it for your student.